Good evening, and welcome to the December 14th meeting of the Solon Board of Education. Mr. Buchanan, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Heckman.
Here.
Mrs. Glavin.
Here.
Mr. Pett.
Here.
Mrs. Moses.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to take just a second to remember Roger Gowdy. Former Solon Board of Education member Roger Gowdy passed away on November 28th. Dr. Gowdy's dedication to volunteerism and public service included leadership roles in the Solon schools, the city of Solon, and area youth sport organizations. In addition to his tenure on the Solon Board of Education, Dr. Gowdy served as a city council member and as Solon's vice mayor. Dr. Gowdy was an admired and active member of the Solon community with a passion for education and as a coach to many students over the years. He will be missed. I know certainly as my time on the Board of Education, when I worked with Roger, and I know several of us did here, that Roger always had a really interesting perspective. He was another superintendent, so he brought a lot to the board, and I know that he will be missed by many. If anyone else has anything to
Julie, I knew Roger.
Kevin, yeah, 'cause Kevin
I knew
worked-
Roger from two sides of Som Center, as Joe Regano used to say. And when I was in office on the east side of Som Center, Roger was the vice mayor for almost 8 years, and he was responsible for leading the council meetings, which can be long and challenging. And he always did a pretty decent job of that. And he tried to make people sort of as much as possible give and take a little bit and try to work things out among them. And as Julie said, he certainly had a strong background in sports and in education and in administration. And I know he worked very hard to get the appointment to the AAU, the Amateur Athletic Union, which he led for approximately 6 or 7 years down in Orlando, Florida. And he got quite a few accolades for running the national volleyball tournament. And he did that for, I think, about 14 years or so. He will be missed, and he certainly was dedicated to promotion, development of amateur sports, physical fitness, and education. And I will miss him. I'm sorry that this happened so quickly to him.
Well, good, thanks for sharing that, Kevin, because I know you knew him the best, so having worked with him as a mayor and vice mayor. So thank you again. We certainly send our condolences to Roger's family. Are there any public comments? Tammy, Fred? No?
No.
In accordance with Board Policy 0169, this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Due to the virtual nature of the following meeting and in accordance with state law, we are foregoing the traditional period of public comment. Should anyone have public comments that they would like to share with the Board of Education, please email those comments to info@solonboe.org. Again, that address is info@solonboe.org. Just as a reminder to our community and our audience, board members receive and review the agenda and accompanying information and explanations during the week prior to the Monday board meeting. Moving into the treasurer's report, item A1, approval of minutes. Recommended motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of November 16, 2020. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Mrs. Thomas, second by Mrs. Moses. Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, Mr. Buchanan, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mrs. Moses.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Pett.
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes. Item A2, approval of bills. Recommended motion to approve the payment of bills totaling $1,254.46 as noted in enclosure A2. May I have a motion, please?
Moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Heckman, second by Mr. Patton.
Yes, Ms. Glavin, these are just some bills related to security and COVID, some signage that we needed to do.
I think we like this one.
Yeah.
I know.
Good one. Are there any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item A3, tax budget for 2021-22 fiscal year. Recommended motion to approve the tax budget for the 2021-2022 fiscal year as noted in enclosure A3. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Moses, second by Mr. Heckman.
Yes, this is, once again, an annual item. We usually discuss this alternative tax budget around December, January of each year. This budget is required to be submitted to the county by mid-January. And what this is this is a process to make certain that the governmental entity, in this case Solon Schools, reconciles where we believe we are with the county from a levy standpoint. And so you'll see there on Schedule 1, it's a summary of levies, and Schedule 2 is the statement of fund activity, all the district's funds, anticipated revenues, expenses, just a general idea as far as what the budget will look like. And then later on, you'll see in Schedule 4, Schedule 4 is just a summary of upcoming debt principal and interest payments over the next 18 months or so. And nothing unusual here. It's business as usual. It's everything is pretty standard. I will say that what is unusual, not for our district, but compared to most districts, is that our voted debt is very low. Our debt, we've been paying it off. We have pretty decent interest rates, of course. And we only have 2 issuances, where there was a refinance in 2015 and as well as 2012 for a series that was voted by board members back in '03. So that's it. We're close to payoff.
When does that retire soon then, or?
Well, no, we have the final maturity date on one 2025. The other one's 2023. But pretty good.
Great. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Concludes the treasurer's report. Moving into the superintendent's report. Item B1, public hearing and consideration for reemployment, OPSI. Recommended motion to rehire retired employee Mary Lou Fazio for 1 year, as noted in the collective bargaining agreement between the Solon Board of Education and the Ohio Association of Public School Employees in compliance with Ohio Revised Code 3307.353. Members of the public are invited to provide input to the board on the issue of reemployment of the above employee. After input, the board will act on the resolution. May I have a motion, please? Moved by
Second.
Mrs. Thomas, second by Mr. Patton.
Yes, Ms. Glavin, this is a vehicle that the state provides us that allows us to save money. By allowing our employees to retire, and for 1 year, those employees will continue to get paid their salary. It saves us from having to have the last 5 years of their before they would retire at 35 years as opposed to 30 years, and it enables us to save those 4 additional years of their most expensive years in retirement. It's a great tool for us that we use.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. McKenna?
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B2, candidate for graduation. Recommended motion to approve Jane King as a candidate for graduation contingent upon her successful completion in meeting all state and local requirements for graduation. It is unusual but legal that a student completes their high school obligation earlier than their class. In this case, Jane King met her requirements by taking College Credit Plus courses and classes during the summer. Therefore, she can be graduated. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Moses, second by Mrs. Thomas. Mr. Bolden?
Yes, Ms. Glavin, this is something, interestingly enough, and I think some of it may have to do with COVID. Some of it may have to do with COVID. Some of it may also have to do with the College Credit Plus program is allowing it much easier to take additional college courses. But this is something that's becoming more common. If they meet the graduation requirements early, through an approval of the board, they're enabled to graduate early and then move on to the next level.
Great, good. Well, congratulations to Jane. Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B3, substitutes. Recommended motion to approve the following individuals as substitutes on an as-needed basis for the 2020-21 school year. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Patton, second by Mr. Heckman.
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, we could really use more. These two are not really adequate to add to the ranks that we need, especially given the fact that our plan is after the first of the year to be coming back into in person for all of our grade levels, pre-K through 12. We're going to need all the substitutes that we can because clearly the trends are a lot of positive cases that are continuing, and we're going to have people that are out for either quarantines, positives, or things that are related to this. So
Right.
the more people that we can have, the better. So please, there's a link on our website if you can sign up to be a substitute for us. You just need a 4-year degree. You don't need a teaching certificate. It is a relatively simple process. After the vetting is completed, you'll be able to be a substitute. So please, if you can, come sign up.
Well, we certainly appreciate that Marie and Ashley have joined the ranks, but again, as Mr. Bolden said, we could use many, many more. Are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Buchanan, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B4, home instruction tutors. Recommended motion to approve Justin Bowe, Jane Langstrom, Julie Moschberger, Grace Paul, Karen Smith, and Kelly Zarowski as home instruction tutors for the 2020-21 school year. Motion, please.
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Thomas.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Moses.
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, this is a process where if the students are unable to participate in the instruction that we have provided to them because of illness or some other thing that prevents them either doing it in person or virtually, we give them home instruction tutors to help make up the difference of that time that was lost. And once they're done with that, they will be discharged from that particular duty for that student.
Any questions? Yeah?
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B5, non-district pupil activity permits. Recommended motion to approve non-district pupil activity permit contracts to the following individuals, and they are listed below. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mrs. Moses, second by Mr. Patton.
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, these are for positions that's remained unfilled from the previous time that we approved winter non-teaching employees as coaches. They're filling roles that were already in existence. They're not new additions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B6, district certified driver. Recommended motion, a resolution to approve the following bus driver as an annual driver certification for the Solon City School District for the 2020-21 school year under OAC 3301-83-06B5. That's Jackie Vondrasek. Certifies that this driver is of good moral character, at least 18 years of age, and is physically and otherwise qualified to drive a school bus as required by the rules of the Ohio Department of Education for the Solon City School District for the school year ending 2021. Motion, please.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Heckman, seconded by Mrs. Thomas.
Ms. Von Drasik was actually a bus driver for us in years past. She transitioned to work for our food service department, and then she has decided that she wanted to come back and drive for us. She knew what a need there was for us to drive, so she is shifting back to being a driver, and so we have to recertify her.
All right. Good. Any other questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Moses?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin?
Yes. Item B7, approval of program of studies. Recommended motion to approve the program of studies as noted in enclosure B7.
Move.
Motion, please, Mrs. Thomas.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Moses.
Mrs. Glavin, I'd like to thank Mrs. Moses and Mr. Patton for their thorough review of the additions and deletions of the program of studies. They looked at it very thoroughly, asked great questions, and we're bringing it for your approval this evening.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
You know, as Mrs. Siegel said, I had the opportunity to review the changes, and again, I know I said to you, but to say publicly, I'm really impressed with our staff. There are some really interesting classes that are being added. because some teachers have taken the initiative and saw a need and listened to students and their desire for certain things, and of course, and it's nice to see, thinking outside the box. So it's exciting, some of the changes that are being added.
And then just to clarify, Mrs. Siegel, then, once that's presented, it really depends on whether how many students
Right.
sign up for those classes
Exactly,
and how that
exactly.
goes.
Yes, enrollment determines whether
Right.
we will offer them or not.
All
Correct.
right, great, thank
I
you.
always like that we review everything we have to see whether it's necessary or not just to keep it, just to keep it. We look it over, and I like that. And I also like the new courses, anything that helps with educating our students, making them aware of something different, understanding. I think it's a great change.
Mr. Heckman, I don't know if you noticed the one under business, accounting was added back after it had
Yeah.
been dropped for lack of
I saw
interest. I figured you'd get a little laugh out of that one.
You've been pushing good.
Yeah.
Good. Are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Buchanan?
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Heckman,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes. Item B8, tuition reimbursements. Recommended motion to approve tuition reimbursements to the following individuals. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Patton, seconded by Mrs. Thomas.
Mrs. Glavin, these were previously approved, and they do meet our district criteria.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Heckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Moses,
Yes.
Mrs. Glavin.
Yes. Thank you. That concludes our business items. Moving into information items and other reports to the board. Item C1, Mr. Bolton.
Yes, Mrs. Glavin, my report on how we're doing with COVID. I have to say, just a huge amount of thank you to our teachers and our administration, Tammy Strom, our communications director, Mike Acom, our director of business and personnel, all of our principals and administrators and the work that they're doing, as well as each and every teacher that have taken the steps. We are, unless something untoward happens, we will have been able to, since we opened up for our pre-K through 6 students back in October, we have been able to stay open for K through 6 all the way through till the end of the semester, which is something that many of us did not think we were going to be able to do. Through a lot of tireless contact tracing, there's been a lot of quarantines that we've had to do, positive cases, through some creative staffing manipulations, the unfortunate sending remote of our 7 through 12, we were able to balance it and to basically fight through to be able to stay open for the remainder of the semester. I could not be, I could not feel better about what we've been able to do. And again, I just can't thank that group of people, those teachers and our parents, doing the right things to keep their kids healthy, to keep their kids safe. All the things that we did to keep us open, it was great. That being said, we have to think about what's going on for
Next step now.
right. We're looking at what's going to happen for that next semester. As we communicated to our families on Friday, we've tallied all of the information from the responses that we got back from parents. And based on that, the bulk of our instructional models will remain unchanged. Our pre-K through 4 students will be, for those that choose to, in-person learning for 5 days a week as normal. Likewise, 7 through 12, based on the responses that we got back, where over 50% of the students want to come into in-person, we are going to have to maintain our hybrid model of 2 days a week in person and 3 days teaching virtually going through that. There just was too many students to enable us to shift to a different model of more kids. This semester, when we tapered off towards the end, we were at about 25% to 30%. If we could have gotten down to that number, we would have been able to bring more kids in at those higher levels. But as it stands now, we're going to maintain in that. The biggest change that we have is in 5th and 6th grade. We added roughly another 10 to 15% of the students opted for in-person learning again. That took us close to 80 to 85% of the students are now in building. Given the size of the building, the size of the students, and the size of the classrooms, that presents too many students for us to have in person at once and maintain those minimum distances. We do know, though, with the age of those students, we know that 2 days a week wasn't going to be enough for them and for their families in order to do that. So working with our administration, our administrative team at that building, we came up with an alternative model of hybrid learning that would enable us to get the sizes that we need. We're calling it a 4-day-a-week in-person with 1 day a week of hybrid. So what they're doing is each student is going to be assigned a single day a week. And for that day a week, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, they will be learning remotely on that one day, but then they'll be in person for the other 4 days. And by looking at each class individually and assigning each student, and I can't
Emphasize
stress
the
this
student.
enough, this was not just, all right, we're going to take A through B and you're going to be, or A through D and you're going to be Monday, and divide the alphabet up. We're actually strategically picking classes so that we can make each class a small enough size so that if every one of those students comes in, we're still able to maintain that distance. It is a Herculean task that Mrs. Minard and her team are undertaking to go through. But what we think that this does is it gives us an opportunity to allow our kids to be in person for the majority of the week. It's 4 days a week instead of 5, and we felt that that would be the least burdensome option for our families at home. We actually looked at, were there places in the district that we could have those students go so that they could, even if they were in person, even if they had to be virtual, they could be virtual somewhere on campus. And at the 100+ students or more that we would have to send virtually at a time, we couldn't find a single location where where the space wasn't being utilized. And we didn't have, unfortunately, the personnel to support those students learning in person here remotely. So because of that, we opted for this choice. This week, we'll be communicating to all the parents about those choices and what their day was. I know Carrie Minard is going to be working with those families that might need some flexibility on which day it is and how those things can work, because we're going to try to work with our families to make it the least onerous for them as possible.
For say if you had a 5th grader and a 6th grader to try to, will that ever work?
Try to align those things to try to make it more efficient for them. Right. Again, it is a very complex task. Carrie's actually pretty gifted at being able to look at schedules and data. Orchard is one of our most complicated schedules, if you can believe that.
Person, huh?
She's really good at the details and doing those things. So again, that is what our plan is. A lot of people are asking, what's going to happen on January 4th? Our goal, obviously, is to come in on January 4th if we can. What we're doing, though, is where many districts are saying, we're going to, as a proactive measure, we're going to not be open for the first 2 weeks of the semester, and we're going to let the disease progression take its course so that we can avoid having people come in. What we're trying to do is look at all the weeks of post-Thanksgiving time, including this week, to make that determination. What we didn't want to do is just say automatically, we're going to be out for a week or 2 weeks to go through that. What we wanted to do is look at how the pandemic has progressed in our community over the course of this time. Looking at where we're at, each week we had a group of kids with quarantines and positive cases. There definitely was a spike due to Thanksgiving. But what we want to do is look at the complete set of data, and then at the end of this week, we will make that determination based on that data and then communicate to our families to let them know if we will start remotely and for how long we will start and for how long we would be remote, if that is a necessary thing. Okay. And like I said before, big thanks to everybody. We're working as hard as we possibly can to keep our kids in school and keep both our virtual learners and our in-person learners learning and being successful in school.
And I want the audience to understand that that's very true. These individuals here are working very hard. They're not only working during the day. They're working on the weekends, in the evenings, early mornings, thinking about this. I saw it over this past weekend. Contract tracing. It takes 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes to contact trace. So I really admire everyone that works here. I mean, teachers, I mean, everyone. No matter what they do, people should be very proud of this organization.
You know, Mr. Hackman, you bring up a really good point about the contact tracing, because sometimes it's 3, 4, sometimes it's 12 hours. Sometimes
I know.
it's more.
This weekend it was 5.
What we are right, what we are finding though is that where these cases are coming from people doing things outside of school that are running contrary to the guidance. We can keep kids safe here. We can keep kids in masks. We can keep kids distanced. The places where this really breaks down are in settings where they're not doing those things, where people are getting together when they shouldn't be getting together. They're not following the protocols, and then somebody has it. I remember the Ohio Department of Health was talking last week or the week before, and they said you should assume that if you're with someone that they have COVID because of the amount of spread that is in our community and going through. We really have to take the necessary precautions at home to keep us safe. And one more thing I really need to emphasize, and I said it there, even if you're a remote learner right now, even if we are on break over break, it is critical that you communicate to the school to let them know if you have been exposed or if you have tested positive for COVID-19. We need that information to help us make the decisions to run the district properly. And if we don't know that, it can cause us to have to do the thing that we don't want to do, which is shift to full remote learning. We need to know, and you need to communicate to us, and you need to follow the guidelines when you're not here. So thank you for bringing that up, because it triggered my memory that I needed to make sure.
I think as a board, we would be remiss if we didn't recognize Mr. Bolden, Mrs. Siegel, Tammy Strom in the back, Tim, you know, all of our senior administrative staff. Everyone has been working just immeasurable hours and so hard. And I hope our community and those that watch and see this reports about the board understand how very fortunate we are as a school district to have the quality team that we have in place to be able to work together, which is key. The partnership that we have in our district, and to be able to have these people that are really doing an amazingly wonderful job with this very difficult task, because there are, you know, we talk about this, but there are a zillion moving parts to every single decision that they make. It's not just, well, gee, let's, you know, do this tomorrow. There are countless examples and situations that have to be examined before they do things. And it just, I personally, and I think I can speak for the entire board, that we are all very appreciative for the work that you all have done. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other comments, or? So that's our COVID update, huh?
It is. Stay tuned for Friday, because we'll be sending another letter home with the details and the numbers and what's going to happen on January 4th.
Great.
Kudos for that 4-day hybrid.
Yeah, I know,
Yes.
that's pretty
Yeah,
creative.
they're
That's
thinking
pretty
outside
creative.
the box and putting the students and families first, and
I
yeah,
can't.
that was.
Until I heard the
that's
explanation, I have to say, when I first read it, I'm kind of thinking like, well, how's that gonna?
Yeah.
I can't tell you, it's not easy, and there was a lot of meetings that went into coming up with what are we going to do and how are we going to get the kids in person that want and need to be in person as much as possible, and that was the idea that we came up with.
Well, let's all remember too, that there's the normal business of the school district that happens in the midst of all this, so it's pretty amazing. Are there, Mrs. Siegel, anything additionally?
No, Mrs. Glavin.
Mr. Buchanan?
No, Mrs. Glavin.
Mrs. Moses?
Nope, not today.
Mr. Patton?
Well, I would just certainly follow up and say that 2020 has certainly been a very different school year than anything we've ever experienced before, and we all have a growing understanding, I think, of both the advantages and disadvantages of what technology can do in education. And that I would just say we want to all be careful and be safe, be healthy, so that we can be happy when we come together in the new year. So to all of you, I wish you a happy holiday season.
Great. Mr. Hall?
I agree with Mr. Patton. You know, enjoy winter break. You know, stay safe. We're gonna get through this, and
Indeed.
we'll do well.
Mrs. Thomas?
I agree. Just have a wonderful, happy holiday and till we get back to school, but truly, we always put our kids first. So this shows tonight.
And just on behalf of the board, I want to congratulate Mrs. Moses. If you're
Yeah,
wondering why
thank you.
the whole board meeting, we're all trying to work through the name change so that we're doing it properly. But Leanne was married over the Thanksgiving break, and so
Yes.
we certainly wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
That was
Thank you
exciting.
very much. Yes, thank you.
This is another opportunity for public comment. Has anything come in, Tammy or Fred, that we've seen?
Nope.
Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion for an adjournment. Moved by Mrs. Thomas.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Moses, which I still almost said Ms. Jones.
I'm having a hard time like
I know.
recognizing it, so
It's like, Leanne, we're talking to you.
we'll get through this together.
That's all right.
Okay.
Another thing we'll work through.